Every year, the global hypertension drug market pulls in over $50 billion. $50 billion. And yet blood pressure numbers keep climbing. 1 in 3 adults in the United States alone is walking around right now with a ticking time bomb inside their arteries, and most of them are already on medication. Here's what almost nobody is talking about. There are over 200 peer-reviewed clinical studies examining specific roots plants. Most of us walk past every single day that have demonstrated measurable, documented effects on arterial pressure. Not theories, not folk tales, published science. These aren't exotic imports from some far-off jungle. They're growing in backyards right now in Ohio, in Yorkshire, in Ontario, in Cebu. And the research surrounding them is quietly extraordinary. We're going to walk through 5 of them today, one by one. The science, the history, the exact way to use each one. Stay with us because the last one on this list genuinely surprised us when we found the data. It's 1,970. A small mountain village in rural Japan, nestled between rice fields and steep cedar forests, has just caught the attention of a team of Japanese epidemiologists. These researchers had noticed something strange in their national health data. The villages in this particular region had cardiovascular mortality rates dramatically lower than the urban population just 2 hours away. The population was older. They worked physically demanding land. They should have been at higher cardiovascular risk, but they weren't. When the researchers began cataloging the diet, the daily routines, and the medicinal plants, these communities relied on a pattern emerged. Certain roots, certain plant compounds, consumed consistently for generations. That discovery lit the fuse on a line of research that has now produced hundreds of studies across 3 continents. What those village elders knew through centuries of lived experience, modern science is now beginning to confirm one clinical trial at a time. Root 1, beet root, Beta vulgaris. You've seen it your entire life, the dark red vegetable that stains your cutting board, that shows up in salads, that most people push to the side of the plate. But what's inside that deep crimson root is medically remarkable. Beets have been consumed medicinally since at least 300 BC. Roman legions carried them on campaigns as a treatment for fever and blood disorders. Medieval European herbalists prescribed them specifically for conditions of the blood and heart. The knowledge was there, quietly waiting for the instruments to catch up. In 2015, a randomized controlled trial published in Hypertension, one of the most prestigious cardiovascular journals in the world, gave participants 250 milliliters of beetroot juice daily for 4 weeks. Systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of 8 millimeters Hg. That's a reduction comparable to a first-line antihypertensive drug. From juice, the mechanism is inorganic nitrate. Beetroot is one of the most nitrate-dense foods on Earth. When consumed, gut bacteria convert it to nitric oxide, a compound that directly signals blood vessel walls to relax and widen. Wider vessels, lower pressure. Simple physics. How to use it? 250 milliliters of cold-pressed beetroot juice daily taken in the morning, or half a medium beet roasted and eaten with any meal. Consistency matters more than quantity. The same nitrate compound in beet that lowers blood pressure is also what makes elite athletes perform better under oxygen stress. Multiple Olympic programs now use it as legal performance enhancement. Root 2, ginger root, Zingiber officinale. You have ginger in your kitchen right now, almost certainly. That knobbly, rough-skinned rhizome sitting in your pantry, the one you add to tea when you have a cold, has a clinical profile that goes far deeper than most people realize. Ginger has been used in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years, specifically for what ancient texts described as conditions of stagnant blood and constricted channels. The Sushruta Samhita, one of the oldest surgical texts in history, references ginger as a cardiovascular tonic. A 2019 meta-analysis published in Phytotherapy Research reviewed 11 randomized controlled trials involving ginger supplementation. The conclusion: consistent ginger intake produced a statistically significant reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, with the greatest effect seen at doses between 2 and 4 grams per day. Ginger's pressure-lowering action works through two distinct pathways. It acts as a natural calcium channel blocker, the same mechanism as one of the most commonly prescribed blood pressure drug classes, and it inhibits an enzyme called ACE, which is responsible for constricting blood vessels. 2 grams of fresh ginger daily, roughly 1 teaspoon grated, steeped in hot water for 10 minutes. Or capsule form standardized to 5% gingerols if precision matters to you. Ginger's calcium channel blocking ability was first identified not through herbal research, but during a pharmaceutical study trying to synthesize a new synthetic drug. Researchers accidentally discovered the plant already did what they were trying to engineer. Root 3. Valerian root, Valeriana officinalis. Most people know valerian as a sleep herb, and that reputation is deserved. But there's a second mechanism in valerian root that the supplement industry almost never mentions, and the cardiovascular research behind it is genuinely underappreciated. Valerian was listed in the official pharmacopoeias of multiple European nations in the 1800s, not just as a sedative, but specifically as a treatment for what Victorian physicians called nervous palpitations and irritable heart. They didn't have the vocabulary of modern cardiology, but they were tracking something real. A study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food found that valerianic acid, the primary active compound in valerian root, produces measurable vasodilation through GABA receptor activation in smooth muscle tissue lining. Arterial walls. When those muscles relax, vessel diameter increases. When vessel diameter increases, pressure drops. A separate 2021 clinical trial showed that valerian supplementation over 8 weeks produced an average 5 mm Houth-Gillen reduction in systolic pressure in participants with mild to moderate hypertension without any sedative side. Effects during daytime use. How to use it. 300–600 milligrams of standardized valerian root extract taken in the early evening, not because of sleepiness, but because cortisol and vascular tension both peak in late afternoon and evening. Timing matters. Cats are extraordinarily attracted to valerian root. It triggers the same neurological response as catnip. The compound responsible is structurally similar to a feline pheromone. This quirk actually helped early researchers track which plants contained valerianic acid in the wild. Root 4. Dandelion root, Taraxacum officinale. This one is going to make some of you look at your lawn differently. That plant you've been pulling out of your garden for years, the one that keeps coming back no matter what, has a blood pressure mechanism that pharmaceutical companies have spent decades trying to replicate in pill form. Dandelion has been used medicinally across 3 continents simultaneously for over 1,000 years in Chinese medicine, in Native American healing traditions, and in European herbalism. Each culture arrived at the same plant independently, for overlapping reasons. That kind of cross-cultural convergence is scientifically significant. Dandelion root is one of the most potent natural diuretics ever studied. A 2011 pilot study in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine documented significant increases in urinary frequency and volume following dandelion extract consumption, comparable in effect to low-dose furosemide, a commonly prescribed loop diuretic used specifically for hypertension management. But here's what separates dandelion from pharmaceutical diuretics. It contains high levels of potassium. Most diuretic drugs flush potassium out of the body, which can paradoxically raise pressure and cause cardiac arrhythmia. Dandelion replenishes what it removes. The plant balances itself. Dandelion root tea, 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried root per cup, simmered for 20 minutes, not just steeped, or 500 milligrams standardized extract with meals. The roasted root form is available at most health food stores. Dandelion root was included in the first edition of the United States Pharmacopoeia in 1820 as an official medicinal substance. It was removed not because it was found ineffective, but because standardization of the wild plant was difficult to regulate industrially. Root 5. Ashwagandha root, Withania somnifera. The final root on this list operates through a completely different pathway from all the others. It doesn't dilate vessels, it doesn't act as a diuretic. It targets the single most underestimated driver of chronic hypertension, the one that most treatment protocols barely address at all. Stress. Chronic, sustained, physiological stress, driven by the hormone cortisol, is one of the most consistent, long-term elevators of blood pressure. When cortisol stays high, vascular tone stays constricted, and constriction is pressure. Ashwagandha has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years, classified as a rasayana, a Sanskrit term roughly meaning a substance that restores and protects life force at the cellular level. Modern medicine has a different name for the same concept: adaptogen. A 2019 randomized double-blind placebo-controlled study published in Medicine gave participants 240 milligrams of ashwagandha extract daily for 60 days. Serum cortisol dropped by 22.2%. Systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of 6.5 millimeters Hg, and perceived stress scores on validated clinical scales dropped by 44%. Those numbers matter because they represent a real mechanism. Lower cortisol equals less adrenal stimulation equals less chronic vasoconstriction. The root isn't masking a symptom, it's interrupting the upstream signal. How to use it? 300-600 milligrams of root extract standardized to 5% with analytes, taken with food, morning or evening. The KSM, 6-6 and sensorial forms have the strongest clinical backing. NASA has investigated ashwagandha as a candidate for stress and immune management in long-duration spaceflight. The same root village healers used 3,000 years ago has a file in modern aerospace medicine. Across these 5 roots, there are 4 distinct biological mechanisms at work, and each one has a pharmaceutical parallel. Nitric oxide upregulation, beetroot's nitrates drive this. It's the same pathway targeted by a class of drugs called nitrate vasodilators, including nitroglycerin. The plant delivers the precursor naturally through diet. Calcium channel blocking gingerols interfere with calcium influx into vascular smooth muscle. Amlodipine, one of the top 10 most prescribed drugs in the United States, works through this exact same mechanism synthetically. GABA-mediated vasodilation, Valerian's valerianic acid, activates GABA A receptors in arterial walls. This is a target that cardiovascular researchers are actively studying for next-generation pharmaceutical development. Natural diuresis with potassium-sparing dandelion's mechanism mirrors loop diuretics but adds back what it removes. This combination, effective fluid reduction without electrolyte depletion, is something pharmaceutical chemists are still working to engineer cleanly. HPA axis regulation ashwagandhas with analytes modulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, reducing cortisol output at the source. No antihypertensive drug on the market currently targets this upstream pathway. These 5 mechanisms, used together or even individually, represent a serious, science-grounded toolkit. None of this is new information buried in obscure texts. It is published, peer-reviewed, replicable. There is a 6th root, one that doesn't appear on any mainstream natural health list. One that a 2022 clinical study out of the University of Edinburgh described as producing the most consistent blood pressure reduction of any botanical compound they had tested at a dose smaller than a quarter teaspoon. We're covering it in our next video along with the specific preparation method that the study used, because it's not what you'd expect. The root itself is common. The method changes everything. If you want to be there when that goes up, the subscribe button is right below this video. No algorithms, no guesswork, just the next piece of the research waiting for you. Start with 200 milliliters of beetroot juice before breakfast, cold pressed if available. Grate 1 teaspoon of fresh ginger into hot water and let it steep while you eat. That's 2 mechanisms activated before 9 a.m. In the evening, whether you choose valerian, dandelion root tea, or ashwagandha, pick one. Rotate them across the week. Give your body time to respond. Blood pressure changes are not instant, they are cumulative. 2 to 4 weeks of consistency is where the research shows results. One important thing, if you are currently prescribed antihypertensive medication, please speak with your physician before adding any of these consistently. Not because these routes are dangerous, the research shows they are generally well tolerated, but because they work. And combining effective compounds can shift your numbers in ways that need to be monitored by someone who has your full clinical picture. Your cardiovascular system is one of the most well-studied systems in the human body, and the research is increasingly clear. The plants that were woven into human diets for thousands of years weren't just food. They were medicine. The distinction we've drawn between the two in the last century is starting to look less like progress and more like a very expensive detour. We'll see you in the next one.